Marcus sits at his kitchen table on a quiet Tuesday night staring at his phone. The final payment confirmation has loaded. $50,000 in student loans, the remaining car note, and the last of the credit cards now read zero. He had imagined this moment for years. He expected pure celebration. What arrives instead is a strange mixture of lightness and emptiness. A weight he carried so long that it had become part of how he stood and how he planned is suddenly gone. He does not yet know what to do with the space it left behind. Elena is the same age. She still owes just under $49,000 across similar categories. She sees Marcus's simple $0 screenshot in a private group and feels a complicated mix of happiness for him and a familiar tightness in her own chest. She tells herself the difference must be luck or a higher income. She is wrong. One of them has crossed a line that changes both the mathematics and the psychology of money. The other is still on the near side of that line. My name is Nico. Today we are going to examine why everything changes after someone pays off $50,000 in debt. Not the surface version that simply says congratulations. The deeper version. The recovery of cash flow, the quiet reorganization of mental bandwidth, the behavioral fork that appears in the months afterward, and the long-term consequences of what a person decides to do with the money that used to leave every month. We will follow Marcus and Elena, two people with similar ages, similar incomes, and similar starting debt loads, and watch what actually shifts when one of them reaches zero. The first and most immediate change is the return of cash flow. While Marcus was paying off the debt, roughly $1,100 left his account every month with no negotiation. That money was already spoken for. It did not feel like a choice. It felt like gravity. When the final balance hit zero, the $1,100 did not vanish. It simply stopped leaving. For the first time in years, that sum remained available after payday. This is not a minor adjustment. For many households, $1,100 a month is the difference between constant low-grade pressure and actual breathing room. It is the difference between hoping nothing breaks and knowing you can handle it if something does. It is the difference between a budget that only works when everything goes right and a budget that has margin. Elena still watches nearly the same amount leave every month. Her income on paper looks comparable. Her available monthly cash flow does not. That single fact creates an invisible gap that widens over time even if their salaries remain identical. Most people still in debt underestimate how large the recovered cash flow will feel until it arrives. They imagine the relief of the missing payment. They rarely imagine the full experience of seeing that money still sitting in the account on the 5th of the month, the 12th, and the 20th. The nervous system notices. The second change is psychological and often more profound than the cash itself. Carrying $50,000 in non-mortgage debt creates a persistent mental background process. Even when payments are current, the balances occupy cognitive space. They influence how risky a job change feels. They influence how long someone is willing to tolerate a draining work environment. They influence whether a person feels permission to invest aggressively or to take a short pause between roles. The debt becomes part of the internal weather. When the balances reach zero, that background process stops. The silence can be disorienting at first. Marcus later described it as the sudden absence of a low-grade humming he had stopped noticing years earlier. The humming was gone. The quiet felt louder than expected. This psychological lift is one reason the $50,000 threshold carries special weight for many people. Smaller debt payoffs help. Clearing a number this large tends to produce a noticeable reorganization of mental bandwidth. People report sleeping better, feeling less reactive to minor financial surprises, and finding it easier to think in years rather than in pay cycles. The third change is mathematical and becomes visible only with time. While the debt existed, every extra dollar Marcus threw at it produced a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate he was eliminating. That is a solid use of money. Once the debt is gone, the same dollars can be redirected into assets that have historically compounded over long periods. $1,100 a month is a serious engine when it is allowed to work for decades instead of only working to erase a liability. The opportunity cost of continuing to carry the debt is not just the interest paid, it is the compounding that never begins. Elena's monthly payments continue to service balances. Marcus's former payments now have the chance to become ownership. The gap that starts small becomes difficult to ignore after 10 or 15 years. This is the fork that appears after the final payment clears. Some people experience the relief and immediately expand their lifestyle by roughly the same amount as the old payment. The car becomes nicer. The housing cost edges up. Subscriptions and convenience spending multiply. Within a year, the recovered cash flow has been fully absorbed by new fixed costs. The feeling of freedom fades. The net worth trajectory improves only modestly. Other people do nothing deliberate with the surplus. It sits in checking and slowly dissipates through small, unexamined decisions. They are better off than they were while indebted, but they capture only a fraction of the possible advantage. A third group treats the recovered payment with the same seriousness they once treated the debt itself. They automate it into investments or additional savings on the same day it used to leave for creditors. They keep their living costs close to the level that allowed them to attack the debt in the first place. This group converts the moment into a permanent change in trajectory. Marcus landed in the third group. He did not do so because he is unusually heroic. He did so because the years of focused debt repayment had already trained the muscle of delayed gratification. When the surplus appeared, the habit of directing money with intention was already in place. Elena has been using that same muscle to reduce balances. She has not yet had the chance to use it on surplus because the surplus has not yet existed for her. The social layer of this transition is rarely discussed and surprisingly powerful. When someone clears a large amount of debt, the reactions from people around them are mixed. Some are genuinely happy. Some become uncomfortable. Some begin offering suggestions that would undo the progress. New car, nicer apartment. You've earned it spending. The cultural script says that debt payoff should be followed by celebration consumption. Resisting that script requires a second form of discipline that many people are not prepared for. Marcus felt this pressure from coworkers and from certain family members. The narrative that he should now enjoy the money was persistent. Holding the line required him to tolerate being seen as overly cautious or even cheap for a period of time. That social friction is real, and it claims a meaningful percentage of people who reach debt-free status. The data that financial planners and researchers observe is consistent. Households that successfully redirect former debt payments into assets after becoming debt-free show markedly stronger net worth growth over the following decade than households that allow lifestyle to expand by a similar dollar amount. Income differences do not explain most of the gap. Behavior after the debt is gone explains far more. The emotional timeline after the final payment is also less linear than most expect. There is often an initial spike of euphoria. That spike frequently softens within weeks. What replaces it is a quieter, more stable sense of space. Some people report a temporary emptiness. The goal that organized their financial decisions for years has vanished. The mind needs a new organizing target. Marcus experienced a period of feeling unmoored. He responded by setting a clear net worth milestone and a specific monthly investment contribution. The new target gave the recovered energy a direction. Elena still has a very concrete target in front of her, the remaining balance. Her energy remains organized around reduction. This difference in orientation, reduction versus construction, is one of the deeper shifts. While in significant debt, the primary financial job is to make the numbers smaller. After the debt is gone, the primary job becomes making the asset numbers larger. The skills transfer, but the emotional experience changes. One is about stopping a leak. The other is about building a structure that can stand on its own. There are legitimate objections to treating $50,000 as a special threshold, and they deserve to be addressed directly. One objection is that any debt payoff improves cash flow, so the specific number is arbitrary. In pure mathematical terms, this is true. In lived psychological and behavioral terms, the $50,000 zone is where the recovered monthly payment becomes large enough for many middle and upper middle income households to feel like a genuine reset if it is protected. Smaller victories help. This one tends to change the felt sense of possibility. Another objection is that the real freedom arrives only when the primary mortgage is also gone. There is substance to this view. A paid-off home is a massive milestone. However, consumer and student debt at the $50,000 level restricts monthly cash flow and mental bandwidth in a way that is distinct from mortgage debt, which is tied to a tangible asset. Clearing that layer produces a noticeable shift even while the mortgage remains. A third objection concerns opportunity cost during the payoff phase itself. If the interest rates on the debt are low, some argue that investing instead of accelerating payoff would have produced a better mathematical result. This can be true on a spreadsheet. In lived experience, a large percentage of people need the psychological clarity of being free from those balances before they can consistently invest with confidence. The debt-free state creates the internal safety that later supports more aggressive wealth building. Both approaches can work. The psychological sequence is more common and more sustainable for many. The practical question that appears the month after the final payment is simple and decisive. What will you do with the money that used to leave every month? If the answer is to expand lifestyle by a similar amount, the long-term change will be limited. If the answer is to keep lifestyle steady and move the money into assets, the long-term change can reshape the next decade. Marcus chose the second path. He automated the former debt payment into retirement accounts and a taxable brokerage on the same schedule the creditors had previously enjoyed. He allowed a modest celebration but left the monthly structure intact. The difference in his net worth trajectory relative to peers who earned comparable incomes but remained in similar debt longer is already visible a few years later. Elena is still in the reduction phase. Her moment will arrive. The critical variable will be what she does with the cash flow when it finally returns to her. Paying off $50,000 in debt does not automatically produce wealth. It removes a significant obstacle and restores a significant amount of monthly cash flow and cognitive capacity. What happens next is a choice. The people who treat the moment as a beginning rather than a conclusion are the ones for whom everything actually changes. You become the kind of person who either marks the end of debt by expanding consumption or marks it by expanding ownership. The difference between a temporary sense of relief and a permanent change in financial trajectory is usually determined in the 12 to 24 months after the final payment clears. If this video helped you see the $50,000 mark differently, hit the like button and subscribe. Drop where you are in your own debt journey and your age in the comments. I read every single one. In the next video, we will look at what changes again once invested assets cross the next major threshold after debt is gone. I'll see you there.